Welcome to my channel CoachIQ. Today we do history, that is nationalism in India, the fourth part, that is the sense of collective belonging. We have learnt how the Congress and the Gandhiji tried to bring different groups of people together. Now, how do you develop this sense of nationalism? How do you get that feeling of patriotism? You get it when you feel that you belong to the same nation. That is, all the people feel that they belong to one nation, and there is something common that binds them together, some sort of unity that brings them together. Now, we saw in India, how did this feeling come? One was that all were fighting against something common, be it the rich peasants, be it the poor farmers, be it industrialists, workers, plantation workers, tribals. Maybe their understanding of Swaraj was different, but in the end they are all against the British. So that is one way. Second is through culture. Even through culture, that sense of nationalism fueled the people's imagination, like history, folklore, fiction, popular prints and symbols. All this helped in creating the feeling of nationalism. Very often the identity of a nation is visualized via an image, via a figure. Now in India too this happened, because how do you make people understand what a nation is when those were the days when you didn't have much of print media, you didn't have newspapers coming every day, your magazines and all were not printed, you didn't have access, no social media. So how do you make people understand what is a nation? The best way was to associate it with the figure of an image. 20th century in India, the imagination of a nation of India was associated with the image of Bharatmata. Now this image was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. He created the image of Bharatmata. Then in the 1870s, he wrote this hymn, Vande Mataram, that is a song, and it was included in his novel Anand Mat. This song Vande Mataram was sung in a huge way, was sung a lot during the Swadeshi movement, and Swadeshi movement was in 1905. Abanindranath Tagore was very much inspired by this Swadeshi movement, and he now painted his famous image of Bharatmata. Now how does he show Bharatmata? He shows her as an ascetic figure. Ascetic is saintly figure, and she is in the image she is shown as dispensing food, clothing, education. She has a mala in her hand which shows her ascetic quality, that is her saintly quality. So Abanindranath Tagore's image, where Bharatmata is shown as ascetic, calm, composed, divine, spiritual. This was his image which he had painted, which really became famous. But this image changed over a period of time because it was published in different prints, that is the image of Bharatmata. Different artists were also creating it. Later on, images of Bharatmata show Bharatmata with a trishul in one hand and a lion and an elephant on either side. Both are symbols of power and authority. Now, if you are devoted to this mother figure, so devotion to this mother figure was proof, was evidence of one's nationalism. The second way how nationalism was developed in the minds of the people was by reviving the folk tales, the folklore, the folk songs. That is all our traditional stories and songs. Now our nationalist leaders, what did they do in end of 19th century? they started recording these folk tales which were sung by bards. Bards are people who tell you the stories orally. So everything was done orally. So our leaders started recording it, and they started going around villages collecting all these folk tales and folk songs, and they felt that these folk tales actually gave you the true picture of India's traditional culture, which had been spoilt, damaged, corrupted by the outside forces. Now the question is, why was it important to preserve this folk tradition of ours? There were two reasons. One is to develop a sense of national identity, and second is to get back that pride in your nation's past. We have two examples. One is Rabindranath Tagore, who himself in Bengal went around collecting folk tales, myths and ballets. And in Madras you had Natesa Sastri. He collected all these Tamil folk tales, got them published into 4 volumes, which was called The Folklore of Southern India. And he very truly believed that folk tales, folklore were national literature. It was not confined to a region, it was national literature, and it gave you the right evidence, the right proof of people's real thoughts, their ideas and their characteristics. Like for example, if you listen to the story of Raja Harishchandra, you understand it's a story about honesty, truthfulness, because that was his characteristic. So that's a folk tale about India's prince, king. Then you read about Shakuntala, it is about keeping your promise. So in this way, these tales actually gave you a proof, a manifestation of people's real thoughts and their characteristics. Now, as our nationalist movement became stronger, it spread, our nationalist leaders realized that icons and symbols could also be used to create a sense of nationalism and to unite the people. So they started using these symbols. During the Swadeshi movement, the Swadeshi flag was designed. It was tricolored, red, green and yellow. It had 8 lotuses. These 8 lotuses were a symbol. What did they represent? They represented the 8 provinces of British India. Then there was a crescent moon which symbolized the Hindus and the Muslims. 1921, Gandhiji designed the Swaraj flag. Again it was tricolored, red, green and white. It had a spinning wheel in the center, which was a symbol for Gandhiji's principle of self-help. And carrying this flag, holding it aloft during the marches. So having this flag in your hand and holding it high during the marches became a symbol of defiance. Another way to develop this sense of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history. That is, explain history in another way. The leaders realized that if our people, the Indians, had to really feel a sense of pride in their nation's past, then the way they thought about history, the way they thought about our past had to be different. For the Britishers kept telling that the Indians were primitive, Indians were uncivilized, Indians were not capable of governing themselves, they were ignorant. So there had to be a change in this thinking. What was the solution? The solution was to look into India's past, where various achievements had been made. Like our leaders, they started writing about India's, you could say, religion, law and philosophy, culture, art and architecture, all these things. Like if you see art and architecture, you see architecture, the Konark temple of Orissa, which is an architectural marvel. Then you see your murals of Ajanta and Ellora, the frescoes over there. Think about your science. You had Sushruth, who was considered one of the foremost person in medicine. It is said he even performed cataract operations. Then you think of maths, the zero was brought in by the Indians. Law, Manusmriti by the Lord Manu. Philosophy, then you think of religion, India the birthplace of Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, so many things. Trade, craft, our muslin, our spices, and all these things had really flourished. We had achieved gloriously in all these sectors in the past. So our people had to be made to understand that we have to take pride in India's ancient past. And how can they do this? By reading about all these things where we had achieved all these achievements. And the nationalist, the historian said that, told the Indians that take a pride in India's past, but secondly struggle to change the miserable conditions under the British rule. Now we have all these methods of creating that nationalism in the people, in the minds of the people, but it was not easy to unify the people. Why? Because the past being spoken about was a Hindu past. All the images were from the Hindu iconography, and so people of other communities started feeling left out. I really hope this topic has become clearer, and if you have any queries, please post them in the comments below, and do like the video, share it with your friends and classmates, and subscribe to my channel to continue studying with CoachIQ.